what we've heard in the paper and news and everything is that Kentucky is one of the worst funded retirement systems in the nation. But what you've described to us here doesn't sound like the worst system in the nation. So we are to separate out the teacher retirement system from the overall. So my question is looking at what you showed us on the one slide, where are we at? Are we the worst funded, or was that the list of the worst of the worst? Or
and that's a great question, and we hear that. And so let me kind of just give some context for that, okay? We're at 54.6% funded, June 30th, 2016. In the last several years, we've kind of hovered around that mid-50 point level, So we've been kind of stable the last several years. We're not one of the better funded teacher pension funds in the country, there's no doubt. And we do need to work on that. We made a tremendous step with this budget, which again, I'm so thankful for. But it's not crisis state. This is a very fixable solution. Yes, it's going to take some money from the budget, it's going to take some discipline, it's going to take some effort, but it's very fixable. In fact, we are on the path to fixing it now with this budget, with this additional funding that we got. So I guess my response is, it's not a crisis. We have a solution, we have an issue that can be dealt with. This, to me, is not any greater than what we were seeing with retired teachers' health insurance before 2010. There were a lot of people who were convinced retired teachers' health insurance was done and it couldn't be fixed. But stakeholders and members of the General Assembly, a lot of people worked on that for a year and a half leading up to 2010. And it was tough sometimes. It was tough. But we came up with a legislative solution that was a tremendous success that a lot of people wouldn't have thought would have been achievable. This issue with the funded status, this is fixable too. It's very, very fixable. It's just that we have got to keep making these payments for 14 more budgets, and we'll keep on, sort of altering, what our budget request, and keep on trying to follow that path, stay on path, so that out there we are at 100%. 30 years out there, we're at 100%. But no, we're not the best funded system, and we're lower in the nation with our funded status. But we're more like county employees' retirement system at 54.6%, because they're 59%. So a lot of people talk about county employees' retirement system or KTRS being, in pretty good shape. Well, we're close to them. Lots of times we get confused with Kentucky employees' retirement system non-hazardous. Those are the state employees, and their plan is funded. It's like, I think it was 13%.
Yeah.
It may even be less than that now. I mean, they may be going down to single digits. So again, there's this, and I appreciate Superintendent Estes saying that these are really different retirement systems, because we are, and require different solutions that we get confused lots of times. So I think lots of times people confuse us with KTRS non-hazards. But great question. Was that answer it?
yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Candy McDaniel. For about 17 years, I was very active in KEA, and for 17 years, I sent about 17,000 emails to you all about WEP GPO, and most of you still don't know what that is. And so I thought maybe while you were here, can you talk a little bit about WEP GPO? WEP GPO?
Yeah, okay.
Because
so
the fact that we don't pay into Social Security, a lot of people don't realize, they know that they aren't going to get Social Security, but a lot of people don't realize that they're not going to get their spouse's Social Security because of our private retirement. So I thought that while we have all of these people here, maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
okay. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, we get this question a lot. So maybe start out at the very beginning. This is a federal law issue. There's nothing that the General Assembly or the Governor of Kentucky can do about this issue because this is imposed at the federal, not the state level. So for our members who are able to get in 40 quarters of substantial earnings in Social Security outside of teaching or before or after they became teachers, so they become entitled for some, small measure of Social Security benefit. There are two federal law provisions. One is the windfall elimination provision, or WEP, and that will reduce the amount of Social Security that you would draw on that you otherwise draw on that benefit. And it's a pretty big hit, okay? The other provision she was talking about is the government pension offset. And basically, the government pension offset says it will reduce any potential survivor benefit, Social Security survivor benefit, from your spouse's account, if they predecease you. It will reduce that by 2/3 of whatever your teacher's retirement allowance is, okay? So in most cases, that's going to eliminate it, okay? And that's what we're talking about here. But you are, with your TRS benefit, you are getting full value for your contributions. It's a very efficient retirement system, and I'm in that position too. Okay, I was in the private sector. I was in the private sector. I'm eligible for Social Security, but I'm going to get hit by the same provisions you're talking about. But for me, being in TRS versus Social Security was an easy decision. I mean, I knew about that going in to a position in which I'd be participating in TRS, and the benefit that I get with TRS is much better. So I do understand that's an issue, and I do understand teachers' concerns about that, but that's what you're talking about. But it's a federal solution, not a state-level solution.
I know that you knew about it going into it, but a lot of these people didn't realize it, and I just want to make sure that,
Oh, sure.
because a lot of them don't realize it until they get ready to retire.
Yes.
And then it kind of slaps them in the face,
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that up. So it is something about, if you were relying on Social Security as part of your retirement equation, that's an important point to think about, and I'm glad you brought that up. You want to contact the Social Security Administration. They're the best source of trying to figure out, because you might get a statement that's going to say you're going to get X amount in Social Security dollars when you retire. And then you go to retire, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, you were in TRS, so we're going to reduce that amount. And it does throw some people off. So, the best source for finding out how much you're going to be reduced is the Federal Social Security Administration. So, yes, thank you for bringing that. There's an important retirement planning consideration for those of you that have vested in Social Security.
May I ask a question of the legislators? Okay. I'll turn and look at you. Okay, I watched the governor's Facebook thing he did about this, and in that he kept mentioning if you were 2 to 3 years away from retirement, you would be taken care of 2 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 3. And then later on, a week or so later, I started hearing if you're 5 years away from retirement, you'll be taken care of. Well, there are a slew of us out there that are just a little bit more than 5 years away from retirement. Far enough away to not be a 2, 3, or 5, but not so far away that putting us into something else is going to be very financially wonderful for any of us. And we're all really kind of concerned. Those of us that are, first of all, I'm a special services unit teacher. I get up and down off the floor. I sometimes restrain kids. I do a lot of things. I didn't plan on doing this till I was 65, so please don't do that to me. And don't do it to my kids. I mean, I don't know anyone that wants a teacher that's been teaching 44 years to still be teaching their kids. First of all, they're going to have to help me up off the floor whenever we finish calendar time. It's not going to work any other way. Second of all, we're just really concerned because, I'm at year 19. Well, I know I'm going to have to do 30 to get to 55. I mean, most of us are going to have to do 30 to get to 55 because we started at the age that we started at. So we were prepared to do 30-ish if we had to. But we're concerned about what your plan is for those of us in the middle. We're concerned about what your plan is for all of us. But we kept hearing the 2 to 3 and then the 5. And for some of us, 5 isn't going to cut it unless we try to buy years and then go find another job to do. And I don't think Walmart can take that many greeters. So we need some answers. There's so much uncertainty, and that breeds rumors. And that breeds fear. And we're all very fearful right now because we went into this job knowing that we weren't going to get rich, but we love kids, and we want to do what's best. And we also knew that the Commonwealth of Kentucky was going to take care of us when we retired, when we weren't 65. And that's what I ask of you, is to think about that. Hopefully there won't be a special session because evidently we don't need to spend any more money. So whenever you go into the legislature, you all think about those of us that are going to be too decrepit to get up and down off the floor at 65. And then also those of us who, went into this wanting to do what's best for kids, wanting to do what's best for the future of Kentucky, and knowing that, we might have to shop at consignment stores and do this and that and the other to make ends meet throughout our career, but in the end, we would be taken care of for our service to our state. And that's all we want, is to be treated as fairly as we had planned to be treated. Thank you.
I'm Stephanie Winkler. I'm fourth grade teacher from Madison County and president of KEA. And Bo, I have traveled across to a lot of places in the last month or so, as you have. And one of the questions I get most often is about what is the inviolable contract? What does that mean? And what things are outside of the inviolable contract and what that means. So if you could help explain that, I think that would be helpful for folks.
Yes, I'd be glad to. So what Stephanie's talking about is that, that there's a state statute, a state law, and basically it says that the benefits of retired and active teachers are covered by what's called an inviolable contract, one that cannot be broken, and that those benefits that have been promised to active retired teachers cannot be changed. You can't even enact legislation to change it. So most benefits are covered by that statutory inviolable contract. There are a few exceptions. For retired teachers, the big one's going to be, it's a qualification, it's retired teachers' health insurance. All that is guaranteed by the inviolable contract is access to group coverage. But if we didn't have the funding we were getting now, which we are getting now, thankfully, retired teachers could be required to pay the full cost of their health insurance. That could happen, because that is all it's guaranteed is access to group coverage. For active teachers, they've got that health insurance, and they've also got the big one, the one I hear about all the time, and more this year than ever, is sick leave. So probably most of you all are aware that when a teacher retires, they may be compensated for their unused sick leave at 30% of their daily rate, and then by the school district. And then that lump sum payment, retirement contributions are taken out of it, and it's incorporated into their last year's salary for retirement calculation purposes, and that has the effect of increasing their retirement allowance. So that is not covered by that statutory and viable contract. It's actually a Department of Education statute. It's not even with within the range of TRS statutes. So that could change. And I know I get so many calls from people, is sick leave going away? Should I retire now? And I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can say what I've heard publicly. I think from what I've heard from members of the General Assembly, you know, my sense is they're very measured, reasonable approach with sick leave. We are struggling with very tight budgets here, and some difficult decisions are going to have to be made because of there's just not enough revenue. But I've heard legislators say, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I've heard there's the concept of what's earned is earned, that whatever sick leave's already been accrued will always be used for retirement calculation purposes. But prospectively, it's going to change. I've heard about grandfathering provisions where people are close to retirement, that they'll be grandfathered in, and sick leave will always be used the way it's always been used for retirement calculation purposes. I do know, I mean, we've heard from actuaries that with almost 1 in 5 teachers were eligible to retire last year. That number's probably a little less this year, but that's a large number of teachers eligible to retire. So I think whatever will happen, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think that probably some kind of policy will be enacted with some kind of view to we not wanting to have incentivized or have teachers rush to retirement, you know. Because I know a lot of our teachers, those with a lot of sick leave, if they think it's going away and they have to retire now to take advantage of it, we could see people rushing to retirement. We're going to have a large number of retirees, and that impacts the retirement system negatively from an actuarial standpoint because, of course, obviously, we were paying out retirement allowances years earlier than we would have otherwise. One of the other big things that's not covered by that statutory and viable contract is that, again, for people who are at least age 55 and 27 years of service at retirement, their retirement allowance is calculated on their 3 rather than their 5 highest salaries. That is not guaranteed under the viable contract, okay? And there's a few other things like a 3% retirement factor, an enhanced retirement factor for work years past 30. Again, that's another carrot to incentivize people to teach longer. Return to work is not covered by the viable contract, but the big ones, health insurance, sick leave, and retirement allowance calculated on 3 high salaries. Those are not subject to the viable contract.
It's good to see you again, Dr. Barnes. I was with Dr. Barnes Monday, matter of fact, and I've heard a lot of this already, but like many of you, several of you. I think there was 56 of us hired in the day I hired in, and a lot of you are out there, and I know who some of you are. But I'm Harold Wilson. I'm the vice president of the state Kentucky Retired Teachers Association, and I want to certainly want to express my gratitude for Kyle for coming up with the idea and everyone being here, and all the efforts that all of you have made. This is important. This is our livelihood. This is who we are. And there again, I go back to Candy was talking about importance of why you want to teach. U56, along with myself, came in when my 2 children qualified for free lunch. For 6 years, they qualified for free lunch. I didn't take it. I was on free lunch for 12 years myself. I didn't take it either. I worked at the school lunch. A lot of you worked in the school lunch. Not allowed to now anymore. But you know what it's like. We came in under the premise that we can't pay you much, but we'll make sure you have a good retirement. And you know, that's what I went on. So that's what drives me, because I love teaching. 37 years, I wish I could have gone longer, but my health gave out. and it's going to give up when you're 65. I guarantee you it's going to be rough. But I don't think that'll happen. My question is this, and my concern is this, is Part D Medicare, Part D on drugs. The 3% that the boards of education are contributing, according to the report, Bo, from the governor's group that gave that report, it said that those 3% from the board would go to help pay for other things. For example, maybe Social Security for beginning teachers. If they take that 3% out of the board's contribution, that could take away the money that we need for Part D Medicare. If that happens, we will have to pay it ourselves. If that happens, people like myself, who has a lot of medical issues and diabetes and so forth, heart and all those things, and it happens, I'm not embarrassed because I know a lot of you out there have same issues. So what I'm saying is we've got to buy our own Part D Medicare program for drugs. And I understand out in the open market, it's well over $1,000 a month for people like myself. So I would just like to see if you have any comments, if I can feel better when I go to sleep tonight. And to also anyone else, thank you very much, Bo. It's good to have you.
Thank you. So one of the recommendations in the PFM report, and bear in mind these are recommendations only, okay? And we've heard several of the recommendations commented on publicly as they're just not feasible, okay? I haven't heard any comments on this particular one, but there's a lot of recommendations in there that, haven't been commented on yet. So one of the recommendations by PFM, this group that studied the retirement systems, is to put new teachers in a Social Security and a 401k plan, okay? And the cost of Social Security, it's 6.2% for the employer, and it's 6.2% for the employee. It's an after-tax contribution. TRS is a pre-tax contribution, which means there's more money in the paycheck for teachers. But that's what it is. So basically, in school districts would be paying the 6.2% cost of Social Security, okay? Something they're not doing now. So PFM's recommendation, one of its recommendations was that to help school districts pay for the cost of Social Security was to, in some way, cut back, and a few of the details, I needed a few more details. I'm not sure I understand exactly what the proposal was, but it was to cut back on retired teachers' health insurance for those retirees who are age 65 and over. And they said that they could achieve $55 million in savings by cutting back those retired teachers' health insurance benefits, and then that could be transferred to the school districts to help them pay for some portion of the cost of Social Security. And again, I would just remind everyone that I know there's a lot of concerns out there. I hear them all the time from members, and again, I just remind everyone these are recommendations, and I think we're probably a long way from what actually policy is going to be. And from everything I'm hearing, I think policy is going to be a lot different from what a lot of these recommendations are.
That's kind of where I'm at, is their recommendations, but we have nothing to go by. And that's why we're scared, because, last year, well, less than a year ago, the charter school bill went through, and we didn't really get a chance to look at it, and we didn't know what we were standing up against. And then it went through quickly. So you're saying, don't make any rash decisions, but if it's going to go through that fast, we're not going to have time to find out anyway. And I think that's the big fear. So.
I understand your concern, And I assure you, I get calls from teachers every day. And I answer those calls. I return those calls because I know they are concerned. I know for teachers, for most of them, almost every teacher's retirement is the most important financial transaction in their entire life. It's bigger than their mortgage. It's got to take care of them for the rest of their life. They depend on it because they don't have Social Security. And without it, their future is uncertain. I understand that fear, concern completely. I absolutely do. So when I'm saying don't rush to retirement, I'm taking what I believe when the governor, he makes a video with the president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, another ranking member of the General Assembly, saying we are not going to do emergency clause. We could. That could happen. I'm not going to tell anything untrue up here. I mean, it could happen. They could convene for 5 days, it's out, and there's an emergency clause, and it's too late for them to retire. Anything can happen. But my whole life has been predicated on probability. What's the most likely thing to happen? And I can't guarantee that's not going to happen, but I think the probability is it's not. And I think that's a very high probability it is not. I do not think the governor and ranking members of the General Assembly would make a video, publicly disseminate it, and say you're going to have an opportunity to make an informed decision and not do that. So that's why I say that. I have a working relationship. We have 3 members from the General Assembly here tonight. I'm glad they're here. I'm happy they're here. They have interest in the retirement system. They've asked me questions about the retirement system. They've shown concern for our members and about what's going on with the retirement system. I appreciate them being here today. We give them information. And again, everything I'm hearing from everyone, you're going to have time. Again, I even heard there was one ranking member of the General Assembly who said there would be a 30-day preview period before the special session so we'd even know what is going to be considered during the special session. I don't know if that's going to happen. I can't guarantee anything. But I'm hearing a lot of comments from public officials, members of the General Assembly, that they are very reassuring, they're very measured, they're very reasonable. We want to be fair by teachers. We want to keep the commitment. And I think there is more danger in someone rushing to retirement because they're worried about a rumor or worried about what might happen. And there will be a new tier for teachers, okay? That's going to happen. We know that. And there might be some changes for existing teachers. There might be some changes for sick leave. I don't know that. But I think there's greater risk in retiring before we know what happens than there is with waiting. Because it may very well be that you wait, we see what pension reform looks like, and then your decision is, I want to stay. Had I made the decision to retire now because I was afraid of what they might do, it would have been a bad decision for me. Again, we had many, many teachers I know and administrators who retired in the last few months. And I know they retired based on rumor because we heard about it. They told our counselors, they told me, sick leave is going away July 1st. I'm getting out of here. It didn't happen. So there's more danger, I think, in acting on rumor and fear than there is in what we're hearing from our public officials to reassure you that there will be time to make an informed decision. Can't guarantee anything, but I do. My whole life is based on probability. I don't act on what's least likely to happen. I act on what I think is most likely to happen. But I understand. I understand your concern and everybody else's concern in this room.
Sir,
I'm sorry?
my name is Marty Thorpe. I was an EB teacher for 27 years, and I retired when I was 65. A point of clarification, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Did I understand you to say that you're going to take part of my medical insurance to fund new hires' Social Security? And you deny my Social Security, I can't collect it. And that's from the federal government? Well, that's not true in every state. It's not true in most states. You can draw your pension from teaching and your Social Security. And I certainly don't want to give part of my medical money to fund somebody's Social Security when I can't even collect mine. Did I understand you to say that?
Well, I didn't say exactly that. What I said was, and I tell you, I 100% absolutely assure you, I did not say TRS is going to take your retiree health insurance to fund Social Security. What I said was, one of the recommendations of this private firm that was hired by the governor to study the pension funds, they had a recommendation to do that, to take some of diminish retired teachers' health insurance in some way, either reducing the benefit or increasing the cost, which in effect diminish that retired teacher's benefit if you're 65 and over, and use that to help school districts pay for Social Security. That is absolutely 100% correct. But that's a recommendation. I have not heard anyone else say that's going to happen.
What do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think about that? No. The answer is no.
Now the other second question you brought up, it is correct. There are states where teachers collect their teacher pension and Social Security both. Those are states where the teachers participate in Social Security while they're a teacher. There are a lot of states like Kentucky, Massachusetts, New York, Ohio, California are states where teachers do not participate in Social Security while they're an active teacher. So that windfall elimination provision I was talking about, that they do have Social Security earnings on the outside, they are impacted by that. And that is a significant impact. And you're also correct that that is a federal law provision. So.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I've paid into Social Security, ran my own business, paid in dearly to Social Security,
Yes.
Can't collect it. Okay? Where'd that money go?
That went to the Federal Social Security Trust Fund is where your money went.
It didn't
And
come back to me,
you
so I shouldn't have to pay it in.
If you got at least 10 years of Social Security's earnings, what they call substantial Social Security earnings, which is pretty low, if you got 10 years of that in, you should be receiving something. It'll be reduced, but you should, yeah, okay, yeah. It can be like, it's like a 40% plus hit, so it is a big hit, I understand that. And I know our federal delegation, the Kentucky delegation, congressional delegation, probably the number one question they hear from teachers, because I've talked to them, is on that very issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're trying to do a good job.
I'll try. That's all I can do is try.
That's kind of a tough act to follow, but I'll try. I'm Deborah Zabrak, and I'm a retired teacher, and I did it a little different. I didn't start teaching at 22. I started teaching at 42 after some circumstances in my life. But I got my 20 years in. I also got all my quarters for Social Security. I, too, like her, I'm penalized because I have a state pension that didn't pay into Social Security, and 2/3 of my Social Security is taken away. Now, because I'm over 65, I get zero Social Security because that goes to pay for part of my Medicare. Okay, so I did not know, like Candy said, that when I started teaching at 42, that my Social Security would be greatly reduced, nor would I be able to qualify off of my ex-husband, which I'm penalized there too. Now, I'm 67, retired, I substitute, been blessed with good health, but I'm scared to death because if they do these new programs for new teachers, what's going to happen to people like me that's retired and there's no new funding going in to pay for my retirement? Because I'm sure the 5 years I've been retired that I've used up all the money that I paid in, and the new hires and the active teachers are paying for me to be retired. I thank you. I love being retired. I substitute, so I am giving back. Several times when I substitute, there's not enough teachers there to substitute. Some classes are not filled with teachers because there's not enough of us substituting. But I'm scared to death. I don't want to be here in later life, have to go back to work and work full-time because my pension's dried up, or I'm going to have part of my pension taken away to pay for something else, take a cut. I'm scared to death. Could my pension dry up?
Okay. So, and before I answer that question, because you talked about Social Security again and being in Social Security because you came into teaching here later.
I started teaching later in life,
Yeah.
got all my quarters in,
Yeah.
and so 2/3 of that's taken away. Because of the other penalty, I cannot access my Social Security from an ex-spouse, which if I'd done another career, I could have. So I get 0 Social Security now, and what I did get, the little bit goes to pay for Medicare. So,
Well, again, if you have at least 10 years of substantial Social Security earnings, you will get some Social Security. It will be greatly reduced by that federal law provision, windfall elimination provision. And for those of you, and we have some people who have outside jobs while they're teachers. If you have more than 20 years of Social Security earnings, just so you know, if anybody's in this situation, that windfall elimination provision starts going away. If you have 30 years of substantial
30
Social
years.
Security earnings, it goes away completely. Now, back to your question, I think, was it about?
okay, I understand about the Social Security. I
Right.
just
Right.
got
Did-
screwed with that. But literally, my concern is now if the legislatures take and change the plan now, and there's no new funding going into KTRS because there's going to be
Right.
hybrid programs. The new hires are going to be paying into Social Security and some new form of whatever program where they won't have Social Security, or they won't have KTRS like I did. It'd be an IRA or whatever. Will my pension dry up because there will be little or no funding except for the investments?
Well, in response to your question, if you close off the existing plan, okay, so there's no more contributions coming into the plan, particularly for a plan that is 54.6% funded, and that's the only thing you're talking about doing. That's in isolation, and no other offsetting things are done with the pension reform legislation, and we have no idea, what this is going to look like. But that in isolation, yeah, that would put pressure on the budget. That wouldn't mean your pension would dry up. It would mean we would need to start having some more dollars out of the budget to make up for that cash flow shortfall that we would be experiencing. So your pension would dry up. We would have to ask, instead of the $1 billion, $30 billion we asked for last time, we got 94% of that again, it would go up a little bit more. We need a little bit more. If we were 100% funded, it's a different story. 100% funded, I mean, the goal with your pension plan is to have those investments pay for the benefit, and it's not dependent on active teachers' contributions to pay for retirees' contributions. But because we're 54.6% funded, you do have a little more cash flow issues. So yeah, closing the plan, your pension wouldn't dry up. We would just need to get more money from the Commonwealth to help offset that, if that's the only thing that happened. But a pension reform could have other components that kind of negate and offset closing the plan. Again, I don't know what that looks like. But again, we've implemented the solution with this budget to the unfunded liability, and that is that tremendous step forward in funding that we got. So there are no guarantees in life. I could walk out of here and get hit by a meteorite,
I understand that.
I'd rather win the Powerball, but that could happen. But I think your pensions, I think you folks, I think we've had public comments by public officials to honor the commitment. I've heard that repeatedly over and over and over. And again, I understand. I'm not trying to underestimate anyone's concern here or to take it lightly, because I don't. I assure you I don't. I've been on the phone with teachers who are crying, okay? They're that upset. They are breaking down and crying. So that's a tough thing to talk to someone out of. So I understand. But I think the worst thing we have to fear here is fear. I think we have a commitment by members of the General Assembly to take care of our teachers. And I think that's going to happen. There's going to be some changes. I think, everything I'm hearing, I can't guarantee anything. I think you all are going to be okay. I think you're going to be taken care of. And I hate to see y'all, so many people worry when I think it's going to turn out to be unnecessary.
Thank you. And I pray that I know our local representatives, they speak very highly of teacher and education, but some of the comments that I've heard our governor make about public education and about teachers, it has really saddened me.
Hello, I'm Alita Sisk, and I'm from Hancock County, and I'm a special ed director. And I just want to thank you for coming tonight, Dr. Barnes, and sharing with us. But I think what most of us want to hear from is from our legislators. You guys are the ones. You guys are the ones that are going to determine our fate. You're going to be voting on this and proposing the plan, and we'd just like to hear what you guys have to say about it. Thanks.
Well, let me begin by saying thank you all for coming tonight, and I know that I can speak for the rest of the legislative contingent that's here. We appreciate what you do, and we wouldn't be where we are without public education. The first public speech I ever made in my life was right here in this auditorium. So we appreciate what you do, and all of us are connected in one way or another to the education world. My own daughter is a teacher, so you don't have to go very far down the family tree to find someone that is part of the education community. So we do have a great appreciation for what you do. I would say that one of the strategies could be, and it has been, and we could continue with this strategy, and that would be to keep kicking the can down the road. Now, that could be a strategy that we employ, but it wouldn't be good for you folks. It wouldn't be good for the taxpayers, and it wouldn't be good for the state of Kentucky as a whole. It certainly wouldn't be good for future generations. So that's unacceptable. And the question was raised earlier, and it was a good question. It said, well, we're 54% funded, so are we in a crisis situation? Well, I would suggest to you that if you look at it strictly from an economy of scale point of view, when you're comparing it to a system that's only 14% funded, that 54% looks pretty good. But I would also suggest to you that that same system that's now funded at 14% at one time was funded at 120%. So you can see what great challenges are out there. And the last thing that we want to do is not preserve the pensions that each of you deserve. The last thing we want to do is to breach on those commitments that we've made. Now, I can't say a whole lot tonight because anything that I would say would be strictly theoretical because we are still crafting this plan, and it is a fluid process. But for those that are concerned that maybe they're only 5 years in or 10 years in, we understand that. We understand that. I've talked to more groups probably than anybody else in the General Assembly. I've gone virtually from one end of the state to the other addressing groups about pensions because I landed in this spot. Maybe not by choice, but I am here now, and I'm honored to be in the capacity that I'm currently filling. So I can put a face with every one of these suggestions that the PFM group made. I can actually put a real live body, a face, on those suggestions. And I know that some of those suggestions are impossible. I mean, they're ethically and morally not right. Maybe statistically or physically it makes sense, but the human element, that component, overrides a lot of other issues that PFM brought up. So I can only say to you that PFM was a third-party view of our pension systems, each and every one of our pension systems. It was a third-party view, and it was an unbiased, it was, in many respects, a callous view of this. It dealt strictly with the numbers. It didn't engage in what I call the human element at all. But that's the task that we're charged with. So So much of what you're hearing is only rumors, and I can understand the angst that you all must be feeling, but I would also like to give you some comfort tonight in expressing to you that we understand where you're at in your careers, what you've the sacrifices that you've made, and the promises that have been extended to you. So first and foremost, we want to save your pension, the obligation that the state has to provide that pension for you. We want to save that. We want to make sure that that's there for you. So that's job number one with us. Then number two, we want to live up to those commitments that we've made. That's a great challenge. But we have to address this situation, because without addressing it, we continue to kick that can down the road. And I can assure you that that 54% funding that we're looking at, it can go away. Conditions can change. We're faced with trying to find $800 million more in this next budget. On top of that 1.2 that we appropriated last time, we have to find an additional $800 million just to make the ARP payment of all of the pension systems. That's the challenge that we're faced with. So what are the alternatives? Well, there could be drastic cuts. Heck, there could even be cuts to the SEEK formula funding. There could be cuts all across state government. There could be huge tax increases. And a lot of people come to me every day and they say, Joe, I can't handle any more tax increases. I'm taxed to death now. So that's an alternative as well, but it's not a popular one with so many other people. So the real challenge is a way that we can save that pension for you, keep the promises that we make, find the additional money that we need to keep the systems whole. And if we don't do all of those things, that 54% can turn into that 14%. Because actuarial assumptions theoretically are good, but they don't always happen. You don't always get that 15% return, which I would suggest to my good friend Bo, those are gross returns, those aren't netted down. So after you take the fees out, it is something less than the 15%. And that's this year. Well, next year, that return may not be as good. And other assumptions that we have to make may not be as favorable as well. So kicking the can down the road simply is not an option. And while 54% looks good compared to the 14%, that's only 54 cents in the bank for every dollar of liability that you have out there. I would want something better than that. Other states across the country sound the alarm button when their systems are at 75 and 80% funded. And I would also suggest to you that in the private sector, any pension plan that falls below the 60% threshold, regulators step in and start running those pension plans. So 54% is good, but it's not optimal. It's not where you need to be. So when we talk about changing the system for new hires, when we talk about going to a defined contribution plan, what that does is it helps to stop the digging. The first thing that you have to do when you've got a challenge like we have is you have to stop the digging. You can't continue to make the hole deeper. And so all of these structural changes that we're currently considering and calculating and analyzing, all of these changes, structural changes, is to stop that digging so this situation doesn't get worse. And basically what a DC plan does, a defined contribution plan, it does shift the risk. It takes the risk off of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and puts more of the risk on the person that's participating in that pension plan, much like what we have in the private sector. So there's a reason why we're looking at the solutions that we're looking at. And certainly we're not looking at these to be punitive in any way, shape, form, or fashion, but rather to address this challenge, this great crisis that's been building for years and has been ignored. It simply has been ignored for too long. And again, it's a matter of money, $800 million just to make the ARC payment, the actuarially required contribution that we're going to need, in addition to the 1.2. That's a lot of money. That's a great challenge. So without making some of these structural changes, it'll be more than just pensions that are affected in this state. It'll be every service and every program that we provide. This was thrust upon us. This wasn't something that we invited ourselves to. This crisis was thrust upon us. And we are now facing up to that challenge, the challenge that so many that went before us and previous administrations didn't face up to. I wish we weren't here tonight. I wish I didn't have to field every call and every email and every text and every meeting. There would be a lot more pleasant things to deal with in the General Assembly of Kentucky, but this is what needs the attention the most. This is the crisis at hand. And I can assure you folks that we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that your pensions are in fact there for you when you retire. And that the promises that we've made to you, that we're going to honor them as best we can. And when I say that, I mean to say to you that if you're fearful that you're 10 years into this, that things are going to change drastically, there are just rumors out there that are unfounded. And a lot of those rumors are the result of the PFM report. I understand that. But they're only rumors, so many of them. So again, it's a great challenge. And one other point I want to make, pensions were never designed. Theoretically, a pension system was never designed. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It wasn't designed to have current workers paying for retirees' benefits. That's not the way a pension system is designed to operate. It is not like Social Security. A pension system is based off of a model where you do make the ARC payments. You have your normal cost, and then you make a payment towards your accrued liabilities. So did we get behind on this? Yes, we did. But the fact that we would be changing to a defined contribution plan only means that we have to come up with a system to assure that those payments into your pension system, those accrued liability are paid off in the manner in which they should be, and we are going to provide for that through what we call a level dollar formula, much like the mortgage on your house, where you have a set payment that's based strictly off the amount of that loan on a defined schedule going forward. So there will be a solid financial plan in place to make sure that when a change is made from a DB plan to a DC plan, that DB plan is properly funded.
I'm Wes Mazer from Hancock County High School. I've worked there for almost 10 years. This is my question to you, Senator. The changes that you make to our pension fund, will those apply to yours?
You bet. We'll be first in line. And actually, you know, there are many of us that if we had the opportunity, if there was a mechanism in place to not even be a part of any type of state pension plan, we would engage in that process. But when you get elected, you're going to be in either one of two plans. If you don't get in the legislative plan, you automatically opt into the KRS plan. So there's a little way out of that, but I can assure you that we'll be the first in line. And also, you have to know that the changes that were made in 2013, all legislators are in the same plan that any state employee is in now, and that's the hybrid cash balance plan.
Thank you. My name's Dean Shamor. I'm the state representative of the 10th District. So I've only been in General Assembly for 3 years. I'm on my 3rd year now. And one of the things that we do in the General Assembly is we pass laws that we put on your shoulders. They're good laws. I voted for them. But it's more work that you have to do in your classroom. I remember one of them being CPR instructions. I think that's great that we have teachers that know how to do CPR. But it's another thing that you had to learn how to do in the time given that you have allotted to teach your instruction. Here was another one I thought was a great idea that I voted for, is that maybe some training on how to spot a kid that's being sexually or physically abused in the household. I think that's a great bill. But that's more work that we put on teachers' shoulders that they have to do in the classroom. This is on our shoulders. This is on the General Assembly to figure out how to do. I am not voting for anything that cuts. How hard is it to get science and math teachers right now? Tough? So I think even a science or math teacher that you hired this year should get the pension that they've been promised. That's on the General Assembly to figure out how to do. And yes, it may have to, taxes may have to be raised. Actually, I know I had 2 colleagues today that passed, that pre-filed a bill to put casino gaming on for a constitutional vote, and the people of the state would get to vote on whether they wanted to allow casino gaming in the state, and that would generate about $300 million revenue a year projected. That could be put in the teacher's retirement system. Maybe there's other things out there that we could do to help the teacher's retirement system. I don't think it's, now, going forward for new hires, you know, I think possibly that's a place we could look, but we have to be very careful there that we don't change something where you can't get new hires. So possibly if their pension is changed, and it's real funny that, well, it's not really funny, but I guess it's sad that we say we don't want the responsibility of knowing what the stock market will do and take care of our employees, but we think it's okay that you have a 401k and you could lose all your money in the stock market. You know, one thing I think we heard tonight is that this system is not in as bad shape. In fact, if it were to get the returns that it got this year for the next 3 years, we would be 100% funded. Probably over 100% funded. I mean, if you go by the rule of 72, you double your money with your interest rate, divide into 72. That's how many years it takes to double your money. So I guess, you know, then if we did have an issue with the stock market and the stock market, you know, lost half its value, the General Assembly has to come up with something to do at that point. But why at this point, when we're not in dire need, do we have to do something? And that's where I think we are. I think that this is on the General Assembly to find the money within the budget or to come up with new revenue sources to take care of our employees. I have a business. I don't come to my employees when I have issues. I take care of their needs, whether it's I take a small business loan or have to cut services or have to cut employees. I don't cut a benefit that's promised to my employee. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Woolley, we've got time for 2 questions, and then we're going to close out. Mr. Woolley?
John Woolley, retired Davis County teacher. And Senator Bowen, I resent you using the term Ponzi scheme and KTRS in the same breath. And you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. Most pension systems are supplemental to Social Security and whatever. For us, this is the whole ball of wax. So it's kind of an apples to oranges type thing. And our defined benefit system, you know, has done quite well compared to most of the other retirements, or the state retirement systems in Kentucky. So I don't know if we need to further that, but I just, like I said, there's a difference between pension plans in the private sector and so forth, where they're a supplement to Social Security. All we have is our KTRS pension plan. Thank you.
Hi, Candy McDaniel one more time. This is for you, Senator Bowen. I wish I was recording this so I could go back and make sure that I heard what I think I heard. Did you say when we switch you over from defined benefit to defined contribution? Is that what you said? Because I asked 5 people on my way down, and they all said, yes, that's what he said. Did you say that?
Well, if I did say it, I wasn't referring to anybody that is in the system now. I mean, what I'm saying to you is the promises that we've made to you, the commitments that we've made to you, is the commitment that we're going to live up to. And if you're 10 years in and you've got a 27-year, obviously the inviolable contract guarantees you a pension. To 27 years, you're eligible to retire. And so what I'm saying to you is that commitment, the intent of this whole exercise is to honor that commitment that we made to you.
Are you going to shake my hand and pinky promise?
What I'm going to say to you is that everything that I do say tonight is theoretical because there is nothing on paper, and this is a fluid process. We're still in crafting the reform as we speak. And I was telling Representative Miles, I'll be back up there this weekend. We'll work Sunday, all day Sunday, on crafting this plan. And until we get a plan in place on paper, anything that I say at this point is theoretical because it is a fluid process. But look, going forward, will the landscape look different for new hires? In all likelihood, yes, it will. It will be a defined contribution plan.
You're going to have a hard time finding teachers.
Well, you know, that could be a challenge. But like I said in the paper, I think in addition to this, what we've got to look at is paying wages that are commensurate to like jobs in the private sector. We have to pay those same wages in the public sector. And I firmly believe that all across state government, that we're going to have to pay a wage that's commensurate with the private sector. So, you know, I mean, I don't know if we'll have a hard time attracting teachers. I know a lot of young people like the portability of a DC plan, a defined contribution plan, because maybe they get into a career and after so many years it's not so attractive to them anymore. They don't like it, and they can take a DC plan to another job. So that's I know that there's a lot of young folks that like that aspect of it, that it is a portable retirement plan.
I just wanted to clear that up
Right.
before we left tonight.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Alec, yeah, go ahead. Last comment here for the evening.
My name is Allie Head. This is my 5th year at Davis County High School, and first of all, every day coming in here is the honor of my life, teaching kids. My concern is that I am a teacher who is married to a teacher. He is also in his 5th year, and maybe just to bring this to light for our legislatures, we are wondering, as 5th-year teachers, we barely got our foot in the door. I guess, what is your anticipation? Will we fall under TRS, or will we be in the 401k Social Security branch? I know that it's all hypothetical at this point or theoretical at this point, but I just want to bring that concern to you. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Alec. All right, I have just a few comments I'd like to make here, and then Dr. Brake's going to close us out. So I know some of you want to get home this evening, and I do as well. Thank you. Just a few points here I want to make. Somehow I've lost my notes here. All right, first of all, what I would say to all of you is this is not a Democrat issue. It's not a Republican issue. It goes back several years. In fact, it goes back to 2008. In 2008, the legislature that was in at that time decided to quit funding the ARC, which is the actuarial required contribution. All right, everybody with me on that? Well, had they funded that ARC, it would have generated today an additional $3.8 billion that would have been in our fund. Now, I know, Joe, we talked about 60%. Well, that would put us at 66%. had that been continually funded. Okay, it didn't happen. Okay, and we were failed, quite honestly. I know we had economic conditions, all those kinds of things. Those are excuses. All right, it didn't happen, and we were failed by it, and that's why we're below 60% right now. We're at 54. All right, so I want to mention that. I want to talk about Social Security, because we talk about unfunded liabilities. Well, Social Security has a $12.5 trillion, that's with a T, not a B, $1 trillion unfunded liability across America. Now, let me put that in perspective. That equates to about $38,000 of debt per household in the United States of America. The teacher retirement system unfunded liability, as Bo talked about, is $14.5 billion. That's with a B, all right? So what does that mean for the average Kentucky household? That's $3,300, all right? Social Security is a multiple of 10 of that liability. That's very significant, all right? So just know that piece. Also, I don't know if you watch your news or you keep up with what's going on with Social Security, but I don't feel much better about Social Security than I do teachers' retirement. In fact, after I heard the presentation here this evening, this is one of the most efficient, where'd Bo go? Okay. One of the most efficiently ran investment returns of any in the nation. We saw that, okay? So that's evidence. These are facts of what I'm giving you. This isn't rhetoric, those are facts, okay? So, you know, I'll go to page 16 of the PFM report that I guess the Pension Oversight Board had ordered that report. Page 16 says that Social Security for teachers actually costs more money. So I'm thinking, you know, if we're looking at this purely from an economic stance, which I don't think is a wise move for us, wouldn't we want to be saving money? But PFM, the very company that wrote this report, says it's going to cost more money, okay? So, I mean, it's $12.5 trillion in debt, okay? It's not a really good retirement plan to start with, and we're going to put people into it. I don't know that makes a whole lot of sense, so I think we need to think about that. I know that's one of the recommendations. Again, it's purely a recommendation, and I don't think that's an option in a defined contribution plan. The other thing I want to mention about that is because the Social Security Fund is relatively insolvent, what do you think might happen? Well, 6.2% is what comes out of employee and employer's wages, okay? The likely thing that is going to happen is a tax increase with Social Security. It's going to come out of wages. So I just told you that it's more expensive than teachers' retirement system, so it costs more money. Guess what happens after they increase it another 1.5% on both sides? It even gets more lopsided. So that just doesn't seem to be viable for me. Now, maybe a purely 401k, maybe that's an option. I have no idea. But I really think the best option is the one we heard tonight. And so I'm not a person who's a big complainer without bringing a solution. So my solution is this. Bo talked to you about a plan to deal with our health insurance several years ago. And what was that called? Shared responsibility, okay? Because you know what? We all share in the responsibility of where we are. The state government shares in that responsibility because there's a promise made to us. We share in the responsibility because it's our pension, okay? So I think this system, if we work together, I think we can make some tweaks to it, some significant improvements to it. You all realize this. You cannot earn retirement for longer than you worked, okay? That's an upside down equation. That does not work. But I do think that if we put our heads together, I think there's ways we can improve this under that shared employee responsibility that can save this retirement. We get the money back into it that we were supposed to have back in 2008. Again, equates to $3.8 billion of change that would get us up today to the 66% that we need. Nick, would you please close us out here?
Thank you, Matt. I don't know whether I need to start with a prayer or just say thank you, but first of all, let's again thank Bo Barnes for making the trip here and visiting with us, and for taking such good care of our money. We do appreciate that, and we recognize all that you do and you continue to do. I also want you to thank Kyle Estes for the work that he did, all the legwork and all the organization. And my rookie friend, Matt Robbins, for hosting us, and all the folks at DCPS and DCHS here for the work that they did putting this together tonight. Please thank them. I'd also like to thank Tom Shelton, Stephanie Winkler from some of the K groups. We've got all these K groups around the state that are working very hard for us, so we appreciate the two of you and all the K groups that are working on behalf of all of us for this issue. Thank you all for being here tonight. And then lastly, I'd like to thank our legislators. They have a heavy lift, they have a tough job, and I know they are putting the time in to work on this. It's really important for them to hear from us, and sometimes it's hard, so for them to hear from us, but we do appreciate the hard work, the effort, and the courage that you have to make these tough decisions. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. And I just would like to reflect on two things very quickly, because I know that the hour is getting late. First of all, being in the place I started my career some over 20 years ago now, I'm one of those 2-3 year people. I think about the contributions. I started my career here, was hired by a guy who retired and became the mayor. I look at the retired folks here that are serving on school boards. I see the retired teachers in our buildings at OPS every day, not only substituting but volunteering. I see them working for CASA. I see them coaching. You have a long retirement sometimes, but think about all the contributions that retired teachers have made just in this community, from mayors and judge executives to volunteers and workers at all levels. So, I really appreciate that. But not only that, I think that needs to be a talking point, because I have not met a retired teacher that's sitting around. Most of the retired teachers I know are in nursing homes. They're volunteering here. They're doing stuff to give back. They always give back. I didn't mean in nursing homes. I mean, let me clarify that. I mean, I see them volunteering in a nursing home. But I think that's important to note. The other thing that I think is important for us, I spent some of my career working in the private side with the economy. And, there's a lot of discussion about the role that tax policy plays with growing the economy. But I think if you look at a lot of the recent studies that are coming out that are of all political flavors, it is very clear. The evidence is that 3 investments that a state can make that drive the economy: funding the K-12 system, funding the higher ed system, and funding public infrastructure. They play a greater role than tax policy. So we have to invest. We have to encourage our state to change the paradigm and make investments, and it's okay to say we have to invest, because investing in the education systems are the best way to grow the economy. If you look at it is absolutely no coincidence that the states with the highest per capita K-12 investment are the ones that have the highest effect sizes in economic growth around the country.
And I think that it's hugely important for us to make that a talking point, to say an investment in education grows the economy. If we want to talk about economic growth, invest in K-12, invest in higher ed, invest in public infrastructure. So an investment in teacher retirement and an investment in young teachers like Allie here grow the economy. So I thank you all for being here tonight, and I encourage you to continue to be actively involved, not only seeking information, but working hard on a lot of these issues in contacting the folks in the legislature to encourage them to invest in public education.